talk about AI and search. My name is Zach Billings, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm the co-founder of Wikimotive. Wikimotive, for those who don't know us, is a boutique digital marketing agency with a specialization in search. And I want to mention that this is my 8th presentation in 4 years, where I have focused in some way, shape, or form on the state of AI in the search landscape. Every single one of those 8 presentations has been different, beginning with me saying it's all a nothing burger because it hallucinates and there's no point, to now that's definitely not the case. We are in the AI age, no doubt. But there's a lot of misnomers about where we're at. Okay, so that's what this is going to be about. The goal for today is not just to focus on AI in the search landscape. It's to think about the question, if we have efforts, hours for our teams, marketing budgets to think about, how do we focus those the best way that we can to maximize the number of leads, the number of opportunities or scheduled service appointments that we can get out of all the modalities of search. That's AI search, that's paid search, organic search. They're all different ways of engaging with a search of some kind or another. How do we get the most out of it in 2026? So we're going to sort of set the stage a little bit here, and I want to start with the innovation adoption curve. A lot of you are familiar with this. Those of you who are not, you're familiar with the terms. So at the beginning, you've got innovators, and then you've got early adopters. Innovators in particular are people who will go way out of their way to use a brand new technology. Early adopters will also go out of their way when a technology is immature because they want to be part of a new thing. And then you've got the majority. That's people who see that the technology is mature and it's ready and it's just sort of wafting in front of them, right? Their friends are using it, people are talking about it, and they're like, okay, I'll adopt this. Who in the room, show of hands, would consider themselves to be an innovator? Gray, Scott, and Kate, okay. Well, it's 3%, and we've got about 150 dealers in the room, so that makes sense. Who would consider themselves to be an early adopter of new technologies? That about tracks. How about majority? Anywhere in the majority, early or late stage majority? Show of hands. Well, if you didn't raise your hand for the first part, now you're just being shy, because that's the rest of you. So I would posit that at least in the area of digital marketing, virtually everybody in this room is either an innovator or an early adopter. You're at the Modern Retailing Conference, Modern. You took the time to come here to learn about new technologies and new ways of doing marketing so that you can bring them back to your dealerships, your dealership groups, and implement them, right? So all of you are early adopters in some way or another. Let's take a look a little bit down memory lane and talk about a few technologies you're all familiar with that will paint where we might be with AI, okay? We're gonna talk about digital retailing, QR codes, and the internet itself real quick, and we're going to put it in the context of the innovation adoption curve. Digital retailing. According to, this was a CDK Global study and then an eLens Solutions study for these two stats. Everything, by the way, is cited so that you can go check this out for yourself. 83% of dealers have a digital retailing solution. We largely adopted them during COVID, when the promise was that everyone was going to effectively transition to buying online, right? We're gonna have customers desk their own deals, we're gonna have finance integration, and now for most of us, they're kind of glorified payment calculators and lead forms. Hopefully you're doing better than that, but in many cases that's the case. How many consumers are interested in completing the process of self-desking a deal to mostly buy online? The answer is less than 5%. So I quickly want to note something about the innovation adoption curve. The second line between early adopters and the early majority, the full version of the chart has a split there. It's called the chasm. It's where technology kind of goes to die when you can't get past the early adopters. Digital retailing in the way that it was envisioned to self-desk a deal to buy online has kind of died in the chasm. Okay? So that's an example of the habits of the consumer not adapting to what we expected because the technology really didn't align with what they wanted to do and what their habits already were. And it didn't present a good enough reason for them to adopt it. QR codes. I remember when I started in auto retail, it was around the time that QRs became something that people used in marketing or tried to. And I remember we would print off window stickers from HomeNet, and we were printing out QR codes and putting them on car windows, and they would link to the VDP for the car, right? We thought we were slick. Well, it didn't work. Why didn't it work? In 2012, 93% of consumers who were surveyed knew what a QR code was, and they knew what it did. So why did only 6% of consumers use them? The reason is that the technology was in the way. iPhone cameras and Android cameras did not natively clue in on what the QR code was so that you could go straight to that URL. So you had to download an app that was a QR code reader, and it got in the way, right? No one's going to adopt that when there's extra steps. They could just go on the internet. So the habit didn't change. And the only reason that there's now a 72% adoption of QR codes by consumers is because we had a little thing called a pandemic, and every single restaurant table had a QR code on it rather than a menu, and that forced adoption, right? So what about the internet? We are 4 years into the AI era, right? That's 4 years since ChatGPT. And in 2000, the internet had been around for 7 years in consumer hands or available for consumers to use. In 2000, 52% of businesses were either online or working on becoming online enabled. 42% of households had access to the internet. So we had significant adoption. Consumers weren't lagging. They were well aware of the internet. They had access. Yet less than 1% of consumer retail spending was being performed via the internet. Why? First of all, you had to break a habit. You had to get people to start adopting the new technology, and rather than walking into Best Buy, just buy the thing online. You didn't have Amazon selling all of the products they do today. You didn't have all of the e-commerce solutions. There were missing spokes of the technology wheel, and it wasn't enough that the internet just existed. So today, 80% of businesses, and probably 100% of you, are working on having some form of AI enablement for your business, and you should be, okay? 78% of consumers use AI at least once a month. And in this context, using AI would be using an LLM, like ChatGPT, like Gemini, okay? Yet there are no statistically relevant studies that currently exist that support what amount, if any, because there isn't enough to support a study, of consumer spending is happening directly through AI or through AI enablement. You can check out on ChatGPT for an Etsy product, but what percentage, just intuitively, what percentage of people do you think are doing that? Not enough to be a blip on the radar yet. This will change in time, but what we're doing right now is we're orienting ourselves for 2026. I don't think any of you are working on your 2027 marketing plans yet, okay? So just because the technology is there doesn't mean the habit changes, and there's a real technology maturation issue. There are spokes, right, of what it would take for you to get onto ChatGPT and then properly engage to be able to take meaningful steps towards buying a car or scheduling service through that modality. And that's in the way, okay? So what is the goal of marketing and search? Whether it be AI, whether it be paid search, organic search, what's the goal? The goal is get more for whatever marketing budget you want to put into it, right? Whether it's $5,000, $50,000, $500,000, you want the most return relative to what the market can support. You want more leads, you want more calls, more showroom visits, and what you should be looking for is, how do I get it? Where is that opportunity? Where are the consumers and how are they behaving? So I want to talk a little bit about what kinds of searches, and searches we're going to use sort of broadly here. It could be a query on Google. It could be a prompt on ChatGPT, okay? Obviously, the phraseology will be different, but the kinds of searches that are being performed are fundamentally similar. The keyword, let's use the top left keyword here, Jeep dealers. I can kind of infer that if somebody types that into Google, they want to find a Jeep dealer. I can't tell you for sure if they want to buy a new Jeep or a used Jeep or they want to service their Jeep, but I can tell you they don't just want to find one for shits and giggles, because that's not how things work. So you could change that to a prompt. You could say, find me Jeep dealers in, describe your geography near your house, right? It can be a prompt. And you can make that prompt longer if you're a more advanced user and you know what kinds of questions ChatGPT might ask you next. But they are all fundamentally the same in that you have transactional, That is things that indicate a transactional intent. Simple enough. The other phrase for that, by the way, is commercial. Google will usually use the phrase commercial. Branded searches are also transactional in nature, but they're very much for your store. So you're kind of going to win that regardless, including on the LLMs, on chatbots. And then there's informational. And it's really important that we set the stage on this because informational searches mean the person wants information. It does not mean that just because you capture their attention somehow that you're going to get a lead out of that person. When someone puts in Jeep, they are interested in maybe going to the website to configure a model. Maybe they want to know the lineup. Or if they ask the question to ChatGPT, it might be, what's the Jeep lineup? If they ask Silverado towing capacity, the next question might be F-150 towing capacity. And you can sort of infer this. If you search any of those informational topics, you'll see that you won't get local results. You'll get national results. Because Google is tailoring to what the user consistently shows through their behavior that they want. Informational searches can produce traffic to your websites via an LLM, via AI overview potentially, via just a regular organic position. However, that traffic does not convert. Look at your blogs. Many of you get blogs from your vendors. Look at your blogs that are ranking on Google. Look at your conversion signals on those blogs. Nothing. That's why. So the other thing that happens here is zero-click. Somebody just gets the information that they want, and they haven't yet moved on to a transactional search. So where do people perform these? It's kind of implied already, but they perform them through either paid search, organic search, or LLMs. So a study by First Page Sage, it's a mouthful, and also one by Rand Fishkin and SEMrush, well-cited examples here, looked at transactional click-throughs, and we're ignoring the informational stuff now, and they looked at what percentage of those click-throughs come through these different modalities. 7% will come from paid search. Don't look at that and say, well, that's a very small number, because actually those are very targetable, which makes them a lot more relevant in the context of being able to go chase them, so that's a significant percentage. 92% come from organic search. But you can only capture a maximum of 30% on any given position because that's the highest click-through rate for any position of organic search. However, what's important here, 7% go to paid, 92% will click on something through organic, less than 1% presently are using an LLM to initiate the click-through that is the entry path to a transactional page on a website for shopping purposes, okay? So this is a lot. I'm not going to explain all of this. This is really for picture value. Yes, hold up the phones. And also, by the way, we can get you a copy of the deck. This is a flow path for you do your different things, transactional or branded or informational, and if it ends up in green, you can end up getting a lead out of it. If it ends up in red, there's an issue there, and either you can't get a lead out of it or it's cannibalizing from something else. I've got one for paid, one for organic, and then we have one for AI, and this one we're going to take a minute on. Notice they're numbered. They go from left to right and then right to left. It is a continuum. Rather than having all of these different pathways like the previous two had, people who are using ChatGPT for discovery and for research and to move their way through product selection, which people very much do on a regular basis. Most of you have experienced this, and you use one of the LLMs for figuring out what it is that you want to buy and why. Let's talk about how this works. So the first example, or step number one, I should say, is discovery. So let's say I want a new truck under $60,000, and I ask ChatGPT, what new trucks are available under $60,000? It'll respond with all of the half-ton pickups that are available on the market, because all start somewhere under 60K. So I want to refine this. I want a truck that's made in the United States. What are my options? F-150, Tundra, and Ram 1500. Okay. I do a lot of highway driving, and I really want my truck, whatever I buy, to have hands-free cruise control. What would ChatGPT say? It would say, well, the F-150 is available with Blue Cruise. It's the only half-ton pickup currently on the market with hands-free driving for highway. Okay, so I've done my discovery. Now I know I probably want an F-150. I haven't test-driven one yet, but I think I want an F-150. Let's refine further. What are the trim levels that are available with Blue Cruise? Now it'll say XLT or higher. And then I ask it more questions. What's the price of an XLT with Blue Cruise? Have I ticked over 60K here? Nope, you're good. It's about 55. okay, what other trim levels are available with Blue Cruise and what do they cost? Well, the Lariat starts with Blue Cruise at $62K. All right, it's only $2K more than I thought. So I think I probably want a Lariat because ChatGPT just told me a lot more than what I just said, and they told me all about why the Lariat has more features, et cetera. So I've decided, after going through discovery, what kind of product might I want, research, what specific version of that product might I want, I've decided I'm ready to look for one. I either want to find an F-150 Lariat with Blue Cruise in stock, and/or I want to find a dealership that I want to do business with and then see if they have one, okay? So now my focus shifts to the transactional. What do? We started with an exercise. The two ways that people found things quickly and easily were an organic and a Google search, depending on whether you were looking for a dealership or a specific product. This is how consumers are behaving currently. The vast majority of people, even when they use ChatGPT regularly, which many people do, will transition to an organic search, well, to a search, and then will engage via a paid or an organic result, okay? That's the majority. We'll prove it in a second. Excuse me. The other way that people might go is they might try and do this through the LLM. Some of you, who are the innovators and the early adopters, have come up with ways to figure out how you can get the result that you're looking for by twisting it out of ChatGPT. Most people don't have that much patience. I'll show you that in a second. If you try hard enough, you can eventually find the product you're looking for, and you can get to the website, and you can convert. It is possible. Mostly, you will find a frustrating experience here. So I put in, find me 1 to 3 F-150 Platinums within 50 miles of Rockwall, Texas, where I live. And it's the same thing as before. I was looking to get one under 80K was the idea here, and I said new or used in a shade of blue. Look at the timer at the top. So ChatGPT is thinking here, and I promise you, this was my second try at this. I didn't have to go looking for the example that made this look really bad. So notice we've sped up the timer here. It's thinking, it's iterating its thoughts. So this is reasoning, and notice that this is, does it show it there? It doesn't show it there. So this is ChatGPT 5, just so we're clear. Okay. And so it's doing reasoning, and sometimes I get the question, what happens if you hit skip? It will speed it up. Sometimes you'll get worse answers. Depends on the time that you do it. I've also done more successful examples of this where I've tried this with slightly different phraseology or for a different location and gotten a better result. I've gotten recent cases where it's just as bad. You'll see it's trying Edmunds, and it tried Carvana, and it's trying multiple dealership websites. It's looking. It ends up finding 2 examples. And in both cases, it said it was a specific vehicle, but when I clicked on the link, it went to an SRP that did not actually have that F-150 present. What a frustrating experience. You wait for 3 minutes thinking ChatGPT is thinking really hard and it's going to save me some time doing a search, and then it ends up on an SRP where I don't get that thing. You're going back to search, and I've just broken my chance at changing that consumer's habit. Make sense? All right. Now I have some data for you, some really cool data. We have 150 dealers. Well, we have 200 dealers, but I took 150 of them that we could get 2 years of clean analytics data for, along with enough ASC conversion events that I could normalize across this period of time for clarity in the results. What you're looking at right now is a 2-year track. This is sessions from Copilot and Perplexity and Gemini and basically all AI tools except for ChatGPT. And the magenta line is Copilot, the orange line is Perplexity, just for reference. And the top of the graph here, if you can't see it, is 150. So you've got 150 dealers, nothing even reached 150 sessions, which means on average, these dealers didn't experience even 1 session per day from any of these. Now let's add ChatGPT. The colored lines are still on the graph. They are squashed down to the bottom. So all of the Gemini users and the Copilot users and the Perplexity users, good for you. There's nothing wrong with those LLMs. But the consumers are using ChatGPT, just so you know. The top of the graph is now 4,000 sessions. And you can see that ChatGPT is clearly the dominant winner here. For anyone who likes math, and for those who don't, just bear with me, if you plot the data points on that blue line, it is a quadratic function, which means every month that elapses, you square that number of time, that amount of time elapsed. What's important about that, it's not linear. It is also not exponential, okay? This isn't gonna go straight vertical. And this follows what studies expect to see with emergent technology that's being adopted. It ends up being an S-curve, where it's flat, it goes into quadratic lift, and then it starts to taper out again. Some studies say that we're already seeing the taper on traffic from AI. I'm not gonna claim that. I don't see that here. So let's just assume quadratic growth. It's gonna keep on climbing, but not exponentially. Let's add Bing organic to the graph. All the AI is still on the chart. It's the blue line at the bottom. We put them all together now. So that's Bing organic sessions for the cohort of 150 dealers. And if you were to continue to follow the quadratic growth of the ChatGPT line up until it meets Bing, because you can plot this into the future when it's a known function, it would take 3 years, late 2028, before they'll cross over. Anyone know what I'm going to do next? Yeah. Here's Google. We've still got Bing in orange. I can't really see the lift off the bottom of the graph for AI. And if you were to model it, it would take until 2039 for it to cross over. Let me be clear. I do not think that we can model that far into the future on what AI is going to do. The world will have changed by then. What I can say is I feel very confident that we're not getting there inside of 2026. Okay? So why is this the case? Great study by, there's a whole thing you guys should check out if you're really interested in this topic, by SparkToro. And they used Datos data from millions of devices to compile this. It's 2 years of data. Okay, so there's 24 data points here. And the blue is the number of users, percentage of users, who use a traditional search engine at least 10 times per month. 2 years ago, 84% of people used a traditional search engine at least 10 times a month. Now, this was as of pretty recently, it was this year, it's 86%. That's weird, didn't go down. I thought AI was gonna gobble up all of the market share of Google. They are used for different things, and that's what's being missed in the conversation right now. So the magenta line is AI use. It's all of the major AI players, and it's the number of people using them 10 or more times a month. Remember back to my innovation adoption curve metrics, 78% of people are using one of the LLMs at least once per month. We're now at 21%, more than 10 times a month. So we've gone from 3 to 21. That's an increase of 18. I know we're like quadratic and then just basic math, but what we haven't done is eaten up 18% on the blue. Why? Because they're used for different things, okay? So one of the other things that I hear a lot is, I've read that AI traffic converts way more than organic or way more than other search traffic, and there may be some truth to that. So not only did we study the amount of traffic, because traffic does not mean car sales, leads mean car sales, if we're doing our job at the store, we looked at conversions. So we put all the AI together in this case, because ChatGPT will dominate it anyway. And here's the conversion track. Now, first of all, I just want to qualify this. Obviously, if Brian and me and everybody else had our way and all the vendors were cooperative, we would have ASC events, and it would mean that I could get a perfect picture of conversion for my 150 dealers. Alas, I cannot. We selected this 150 dealers because at least they had consistent ASC click-to-call and ASC form submission events, which just means that I can normalize the data. This is not the correct volume of conversions across all 150 dealers, but it is a correct characterization of their lift over time, okay? So that is a little steeper than when we looked at the traffic graph. Remember that, it's foreshadowing. There's Bing, and there's Google. The one and only shameless plug that I'm going to put in this presentation is if you're a Wikimotive dealer, in the last year, you've seen a 47% increase in average conversions from Google traffic. The point for the presentation, though, is that we still can't see the blue line lift off the bottom. That's meaningful. What do the stats say? So Adobe for Business did a study, and if you look at AI traffic, they did it not against organic traffic, they did it against all traffic sources. So that's referral included, that's social included, so you're gonna have different traffic qualities and intentions there. But they saw AI traffic sticks around on site for 32% longer. Yet currently, and this is the most recent stats in their study, it was changing over time, currently it converts 23% less according to them. That would tend to signal that your AI users are definitely engaged, but they're probably engaged in gathering information, which is more consistent with what many users are using the technology for. If you look at our data, we actually saw that AI traffic is converting 48% more, at least in the automotive context, than organic Google search, okay? So that's impactful, it matters, but you have to remember that we still have 1/200th the amount of traffic. We've got to get to only about 33% less before that math starts to work out as even. So there's a huge delta there. What about AI overview? Huge focus on this. This is being talked about in virtually every 20 group. Many vendors are talking about the importance of AI overview and how much you need to be a cited source in the AI overview, which is part of the main Google SERP. And the other thing about this is, if you think about my study here, we don't see any unique identifiers for traffic that came in from AI overview, so I can't model that. What we can do instead is look at some other things that we know about AI overview to figure out, is it important or not? So if you ask Google, why doesn't AI overview show up on transactional searches? You'll get an AI overview, and it'll answer your question. The simple answer is because Google would be eating their own lunch if they did this. When I spoke at DMSC, no transactional searches were producing AI overviews. Then, about 2 weeks after DMSC this year, Stephen Alstead from the Rorman Group, who we work with, called me up and said, Zach, I see AI overview appearing in transactional searches. And I said, oh shit, maybe I should go check that out. And so I did a bunch of searches, and lo and behold, we could find some. And it was showing up fairly prominently when it showed up. So a study was done by RankFuse Digital, and what they found was that AI overview, when it showed up on a transactional search, was cannibalizing paid search to the tune of 2.5 times less click-through rate. Anyone know how Google makes their money? Right. So what's happened since is Google tested it in more transactional searches, and it's showing up in fewer transactional searches now. The actual statistic, as of now, is that 11% of search queries will have an AI overview in them, okay? So if there are 100 different keywords, 11 of them will have an AI overview. But what about the search volume? How does the search volume differ between the 11% and the 89%? I'll give you an example. Best Ford dealer. How many times, someone just yell out an answer, how many times do you think that is searched monthly in the entire Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex?
10 times.
Thank you, Brian. 10 times. So, and they probably are all dealers. So it is searched 10 times per month. If you search Ford dealers, it's 13,000 times. Guess which one shows an AI overview and which one doesn't? Best Ford dealers will show an AI overview because there's kind of one answer. And Ford dealers will not. So when you look at this, not by quantity or plurality of keywords, but you look at it by search volume, less than 1% of transactional searches produce an AI overview. Which means if you're really focused on showing up an AI overview, and that's part of your SEO plan, right? That's how you either select a vendor or you select techniques to deploy inside of your dealership, your dealer group. You are chasing less than 1% of the opportunity. And there's not a good reason why Google would want to change that equation. Doesn't behoove them. You can try these for yourself. So informational keywords on here. If you try them, you will find an AI overview. Do the transactional ones, and predominantly you will not. When I tested this like a week and a half ago, Hyundai lease deals did produce one. But usually at this point, when a transactional search produces an AI overview, it is not only below the paid results, It's below the first handful of organic results as well, so it's typically a scroll to find it, okay? Let's look at where AI is going in the search landscape. A lot of people ask me, what about ads? What about advertising through the lens of AI search? Where's that going? So far, it hasn't really gotten off the ground in a meaningful way. That's probably going to change. I would not be astonished if when I write my presentation for DMSC, I'm writing about some kind of significant involvement in the ad space, the paid space in AI search. I think personally it's a lot more likely that next MRC is when we'll be talking about that through the lens of 2027, okay? A couple examples here. So Walmart has announced an integration with OpenAI, which means soon you'll be able to check out with Walmart products if they're identified by OpenAI within ChatGPT, right? So you can check out directly. You can do that with Etsy already. DoorDash has announced an integration. So the thought would follow, right? What about Cars.com and Auto Trader and Car Gurus? When are they going to get in bed with OpenAI to be able to start deploying third-party inventory into this landscape? Makes sense. If you read economic news, you follow CNBC, you look at where these companies are at, OpenAI is not making a lot of money right now. And what they're actually doing is they're very focused on keeping their market share dominance by continuing to advance the model and by investing and co-investing. And so there's a lot going on, and it's heading towards a place. But right now, they have to sort of triage their focus. Walmart is a nearly $1 trillion market cap company. DoorDash is a $100 billion market cap company. Nothing against Cars.com necessarily, but Cars.com, for reference, is a less than $1 billion market cap company. So Cars.com is 100 times smaller than DoorDash and 1,000 times smaller than Walmart, and OpenAI is triaging who they want where they want to spend their money, right? It may not happen that quick, and it's actually, in my mind, a lot more likely, if you just think about it intuitively, that wouldn't they want to launch their own ad platform so that you can kind of have the ChatGPT version of VLA? Think back to the flow that we were doing, right? We went through discovery, decided we want an F-150. Then we got to trying to figure out trim levels of an F-150. Wouldn't it be great if you could get your F-150s to show up in like a sidebar, kind of like shopping cards, VLA cards? That'd make a lot of sense. I am sure this is coming, but it's not here yet. OpenAI also launched the Atlas browser. This has gotten a good bit of buzz, number of questions. You kind of need you need a current model Mac with the latest OS, and so you've narrowed this down to a teeny tiny subset of people, and it's not gotten that far yet. Also, if you use the search feature in Atlas, it's actually porting through Google. It's a Google search. So the thing to understand about this is it could be going somewhere, but this is not hot news yet. It's not a reason to vibrate out of our seat and change where we're putting our marketing dollars, not for this year. So I've told you that there's not a lot of traffic from AI. I've told you that nothing about it is mature enough yet that that you have a way to deploy into where the consumer is looking in a meaningful way that's going to impact your bottom line. What can you do, right? There are some things, but a few of these are also not what they're cracked up to be. So structured markup, schema data. This has long been something that's been important in SEO anyway. This is not new. It's not something that is super special to the AI landscape. However, we'd be foolish not to be paying attention to it, right, to future-proof for this. So, excuse me. So schema markup, you've got something like a vehicle schema, okay? Let's say you've got an F-150, and it'd be model F-150, type truck, MSRP, sale price, and it's just the features that a search engine or an LLM would want to know about. And if you want to show up when someone types in that query, right, that took me 3 minutes to get an answer to, find me an F-150 Platinum within X amount of you want your schema to be correct. None of the website platforms right now actually implement this the way that ChatGPT would tell you is correct, but it doesn't matter. Check my work on this. Go to ChatGPT if you'd like. Put one of your VDPs in and ask it to describe what's on that. It'll tell you it's an F-150 in this color, blah, blah, blah. and then ask it, what schema data is missing from this example? And it'll tell you, this is all the schema that's missing here. Well, gives. You know exactly what's here, yet you're saying the schema's missing. Google also can parse this information, and AI is supposed to be getting better and better at reasoning and inference. So it doesn't need all of the things to follow, it just needs for us to not be lazy. So I would like to see more cooperation with some of the website vendors to get perfect schema put into place. It is an uphill battle right now, let me tell you. We are working on future-proofing our dealers for a range of technological implications that may help in the future with AI search, and it can be difficult where they haven't baked that into the platform already. Reviews. This is the main thing. Reviews and mentions are the primary area that you have control over this, and I'm sorry to say it's not something a vendor can do for you. You need to treat your customers right if you want to get the best possible visibility in AI search. The way that LLMs look at information, or one of the primary things that they look at when they are having to query the web, is consensus. That's what it sounds like. If they have to query the web for best Ford dealer in some kind of distance from where you're located, they're looking for reviews, they're looking for mentions, they're looking to understand who's the best. You treating your customers right, getting great reviews, and getting mentions from your community engagement will actually go a lot further than any kind of AEO, GEO, LLMO that anybody's going to be able to do for you right now. Citation hygiene is a basic SEO best practice. Do it. It's also helpful for consensus. And then funny enough, traditional SEO is the most impactful thing that you can really do beyond treating your customers right and curating your reviews. Scan the QR, there's a really interesting study on creating a made-up word and getting ChatGPT to know what it is because it was only available via a Google search for it to figure out that information. AI overview, Gary Illies from Google said you don't need GEO or LLMO, and he was also implying AEO because it's all the same thing, it's just different acronyms and we haven't settled on one yet. You just need regular SEO practices in order to show up in AI overview. You shouldn't need to anyway, because we covered this. It's only 1% of your opportunity. But if you're really fixed on, I gotta show up in AI overview, SEO is your friend, because usually the AI overview is queuing off the first 5 positions of traditional organic results. So the takeaway here is that your SEO practices that are already doing you huge favors, hopefully, are mostly the things that you need to be doing to future-proof yourself for search in LLM for now. This may adapt further over time, but it's an evolving technology, and there is no other set of techniques that are available to anybody right now. Plus, most people are not using the LLMs that way. So curate your reviews, good schema markup, pay attention to it, do good SEO. That's how you do AEO, GEO, LLMO, there we go, in 2026. So to recap, 7 years into the internet, 1% of consumer spending was being done online. And we're 4 years into AI. No matter what modality people use to perform a search, an informational search is for information and will not produce leads. So keep your focus trained. AI traffic as of now is 1/200th that of organic Google and is on track to meet Bing in 3 years. So when you're thinking about where your marketing budget should go and what practices are going to be important to you this year, you may want to think about where the opportunity really lies. Is it on the LLM, or is it in some form of traditional search? So I said at the beginning, we only got a couple of hands, but I posit that at least in this space, this room is filled with innovators and early adopters. And what happens is, in this conference, by its own very nature, in your 20 groups, in your chats between colleagues, you're talking about the latest, greatest technologies. And so you're in a very effective echo chamber, talking about all the right things to make sure that you're a step ahead. But what you end up doing, not just in the context of AI, but in the context of technology and marketing, is you have a tendency to keep on echoing back the urgency of things that maybe are not where the consumer is currently putting their focus. Go where the money is, go where the leads are. Think about the future, plan for the future, future-proof, but execute this year where the money is. If any of you are going back to a dealership or a dealer group where you will get kicked summarily out of somebody's office if you say AI is not the focus of our search plan this year, I can help. The QR, or if you want to see me at the booth, goes to a form, and what we'll create is those same charts where it's the AI, Bing, Google. We'll create that for your analytics or your dealer group's analytics and provide that to you in a PDF so that you have something to avoid getting kicked out of that office. Thanks, guys.
All right, Zach, stay up there, Zach. You're not getting off easy. First of all, I really appreciate, Zach, the time you took to put a really informational slide. How many of you? Let's give him another round of applause. That was great.
Thank you.
Zach, I started in SEO, and I've been watching. I'm not a big user of LLMs yet, but I have a couple thoughts, and I think maybe some of you in this room have had the same thoughts. Since I have an Airbnb property, and I've been playing around with the LLM, it seems for travel, the LLMs are pretty amazing. So I made sure the website for our one property has lots of content, lots of questions and answers, reviews and everything. And when I say, hey, I need the best 4-bedroom rental in the city center, ChatGPT 100% has everything.
Yep.
But I took the time to build the content. Do dealer websites have to fundamentally change? I've said this before, 99% of the pages are VDPs. They expire every 60 days.
Transient.
There's like 10 pages of static content, and that content is very templated. For the website companies here, for the dealers here, is this the time to prepare to rethink where we're building evergreen content, positional content, bringing review content more owned in the website? Help me understand, because I think one of the problems, if the LLMs become a bigger thing, then all the traffic's going to go to cars.com or KBB, right, because they have all the editorial content, they have all the reviews. The dealer websites is basically Google Maps plus a spinning inventory of cars. What's your thoughts for the future?
So the wonderful thing about the conundrum is that you don't have to solve it just for the future of search. You don't have to do all of this investment and legwork, building out pages just for the one-day hope that people use LLMs that way, because content is king in SEO today.
Right, it would help now.
It'll help now, and it will future-proof you if you're keeping it evergreen or you're keeping it updated and your content is valuable to the end user. And there are some little tricks that can be done when you're building content. You can break your content down into subsections that are a little bit more digestible for an LLM. And what that does is it allows it to pull out little snippets in case somebody does ask a question that clues in on that smaller answer, and then your page will be the cited source. So the answer is, do great content that answers consumer questions. It'll help your SEO today. Write it with tomorrow in mind.
I love that. And I just want to
project.
we couldn't have done. Okay. Let me just get close to
Yeah, okay.
And this is all on video. When we think of actionable item, why don't you, there we go. Why don't you ask your website provider, make a little note, those of you taking notes, how many static pages are on my website? Meaning pages that stay consistent. I want you to know that. I want you to maybe think about how do we grow that. Let me ask another question. When I think of search and schema, everyone says they're schema compliant or schema.org compliant. Mm-hmm. Are we talking about two different things? Because I thought, this is just when I'm hearing you, that the schema markup that you're talking about isn't fully baked into the top website platforms. Where are we in that, just on a scorecard?
Yeah, so I would say we probably score 8 out of 10 in terms of what matters. A good for instance would be a number of website platforms are using the product schema for a VDP. Well, a product has a brand and a model and a SKU number or a VIN number, right? So you can kind of build out what a car is using a product schema.
Yes.
You're technically supposed to use the vehicle schema. That's the correct one.
Okay.
So are we using exactly the right thing in every case? No, not necessarily. If you ask an LLM, they'll virtually always tell you, no, the schema is not where it's supposed to be. However, if you search it in the source code, sometimes it's also just not where it expected it to be.
Okay.
And ultimately, if it can figure out what's on the page, it shouldn't matter.
So I love that recommendation. Put in your URL, ask the LLM what's on this page. I think that's a great one. Since I'm always testing for my rental property as well, because I write a lot. LinkedIn for automotive queries gets cited a lot. There were a time back in the day where link building and paying for links and link weight and quality, it was kind of a half game or scam or real. Should dealers be thinking about a content syndication strategy? Because when I do LLM searches on things like who's a leader in CDP and who's a leader on who's the best website platform, you know, I have to kind of chuckle, because if you said like, what's the best website platform for dealers, it was like Overfuel wrote an article about themselves and said, we're the best website platform. And they listed 4 other website platforms, but they gave themselves an award. But the LLM is picking that up as, and I'm like, who the hell's Overfuel? Like, I don't know a single one of my clients are on Overfuel. But it made me think, do we have to, as dealers here in this room who are in a competitive market, do we need to be syndicating our opinion, our services to local news websites or other things, not for the link juice, but do we have to
citation,
like the citations?
Yeah.
Help me understand that.
That's your consensus thing, right? So LLMs want consensus, and they want more things saying these are the good guys. These are the guys to go see.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely. If you can get valid syndication, that should help. However, in practice, how much work does it take to get your content, your opinion, your mentions of you spread to enough places that it matters? And then be careful. If you reach too far, you might get into spammy links. And then what does that do on the SEO side, where 90% of our opportunity is coming from now? So be careful not to shoot yourself in the foot going after that, but I would say that authentic community engagement, authentic outreach to get your articles disseminated to places, syndicated to places that you can get those mentions, will create consensus, and it will help future-proof against this future.
Great. Well, let's give Zach another hand. That was a great keynote presentation. I want to thank everyone.